I've been eager to stress on this channel that mythology has a great purpose in our personal, spiritual and collective cultural lives. In scientific modernity, we tend to value the brute fact all the more. If something can't be reduced down to a scientific equation, it has to be resigned to the dustbin of history. It's obsolete, even silly. Now, I think when we engage in this, we don't just lose the beautiful stories which give our culture flavour and colour, depth and dimension. We also throw away a higher order of truth, something that talks to the symbolic and the spiritual. It speaks to eternity and tradition over the passing and the ephemeral. It's worth having this in mind when we think about St. George. Today is traditionally St. George's Day, although it has been moved a few days later this year because of the late date of Easter. Now, Keir Starmer has held a reception at Downing Street alongside people like Gary Lineker. He's got his finger on the pulse of modern Britain, eh? But the reason he's doing this is something I speak about a lot on this channel. He wants to present any view of Englishness outside of the liberal mainstream as hateful, as evil, as only held by insane people frothing at the mouth who simply hate others for having different colour skin and coming from different cultures. Disgusting bigots who shame us. In essence, Starmer's Englishness is just liberal Englishness, which is well represented in this clip with its typical smugness about what our identity really is.
Being British is all about driving a German car to an Irish-themed pub to drink Belgian beer and then going home, buying an Indian takeaway to sit on a Swedish sofa in front of a Japanese television to watch American shows, and all the while being suspicious of anything foreign.
Now, what this man is describing isn't England at all. It's a corrupted version of England that stems from the economic globalism that we live under, as well as the multicultural leftist ideology. So what actually is Englishness? Well, I think it harks back to the English people, obviously, but when we look at the mythology of St. George, I think it tells us a lot. Obviously, this is about facing the dragon, facing a great threat, being heroic, brave, facing down the danger of the world. Now, from alternate understandings, that could speak to the advancements we made during the Industrial Revolution and with the British Empire, when Englishmen would travel all around the globe, often into the strangest and darkest areas to civilise them. It also speaks to our individual lives. When you think of the people who are cherished in English culture, they exhibit these qualities in their own day-to-day way. Someone like Fred Dibner, for instance, exhibiting clear bravery, facing the dragons of his own in those great big towers he used to climb, but he did it with a simple northern working man's grit. Churchill, who may well be questioned quite a lot these days, at least the mythos around him is the same. It's something about bulldog spirit, not giving in, facing darkness. Of course, in this day and age, the bulldog spirit is very much played down. That could create problems for the mainstream. What's played up is this sense of softness, tolerance and diversity, endless kindness and an unthinkingness towards the broader themes of history. Nowadays, we must affirm that the story of St. George is simply a myth, just like the story of King Arthur and Excalibur. These things aren't scientific, they're just for stupid people. Oh, by the way, don't you know St. George was a Turk, you stupid, evil bigot? Of course, they love to say this because it plays into their idea of modern multiculturalism, not realising that all national cultures involve influences from outside that have often been taken into the river of a culture, the narrative of a culture, over hundreds of years and made a people's own. But then this comes to the whole point in the phrase "a peoples." When we think about St. George's Day, it speaks to a people, i.e. the English. And if you think the English are a people in this day and age, you are literally, quote, worse than Hitler. Again, being English to the mainstream is just having an assortment of things from around the world, things that do mean something, things that are worthy of cultural expression and value. Yet because modernity has become so corrosive and mass immigration has got so extremely out of control, more and more people are harking back with regard to what it means to being English. And you can see the system has noticed this. Is it a coincidence that the 22nd of April has been labelled as Stephen Lawrence Day now? Now, I think we can all agree what happened to Stephen Lawrence was terrible. However, it's notable how much the mainstream talks about Stephen Lawrence and how little they speak about people such as Chris Donald or Lee Rigby. Now those two, amongst others, have been murdered in cold blood for racial or religious reasons. They just happen to be the wrong colour for the present system to care, and if you raise it, you will be seen as an evil bigot who's not welcome in modern Britain. And this is because what they're doing with Stephen Lawrence Day isn't respecting this guy's memory and what happened to him. They're trying to create a new mythology, something which speaks to liberal, multicultural modern Britain and the values we should all share. Yet because such people are managerial modernist ideologues, people more concerned with brute fact and controlling what people think than the deep poetry of what real tradition means, they're never going to succeed with this. After all, the very reason why the mythology of St. George endures within the English spirit is one, because it's been woven into us over centuries. It's in our very language, the way we think about ourselves. But it also speaks to the archetypes which underlie our very natures, ideas of facing evil, overcoming darkness, facing difficulty and cracking on. So the mythology of St. George acts to guide us both individually and collectively. It speaks to a higher, more transcendent dimension. That the powers that be think they can throw in new days to create a new modernist mythology just tells us they're post-modernists who don't really have an understanding of national identity. And given that, we can be happy on St. George's Day this year because we're sinking into something deeper in our tradition, knowing that it's a way to overcome the limitations of modernity, knowing too that the spirit of St. George within us is one day ready to rise and slay the dragon of modernity. Now, if you're interested in spiritual and personal transformation, do check out my new channel on that down below. If you want to connect with me on these themes, do join the Substack, get exclusive content there too. Other than that, do let me know your thoughts in the comments, and please do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new. Happy St. George's Day.